One of the most beautiful Buddhist teachings is that of Katanyu Kataweti. It teaches us to be grateful and repay kindness that has been given to us. No monk embodied this more than the Venerable Sariputta. Upatissa, later to be known as Sariputta, listened to the Buddha's Dhamma from the Venerable Assaji. Using his vast reserves of wisdom, Upatissa achieved awakening as a Sotapanna, a stream enterer. The Venerable Assaji invited Upatissa to go with him to go visit the Buddha. Obviously, Upatissa would have been delighted to go. However, he had promised his faithful friend Kolita that if he were to find the path to the deathless, Nibbana, he would share his findings with him immediately. Taking his leave of the Venerable Assaji, Upatissa went to find Kolita. After Upatissa shared the Venerable Assaji's words with Kolita, Kolita too obtained awakening as a Sotapanna. The two men were eager to go see the Buddha. However, they thought about the 1,000 men who had followed them in joining Sanjaya. Those men had followed Upatissa and Kolita faithfully as the two men were searching for a worthy master. Now that they had found the Buddha, it would be heartless for them not to give the 1,000 men a choice. When given the choice, all 1,000 men stated that they would go along to see the Buddha. Before they left, the two men extended an invitation to Sanjaya. Even though his teachings did not lead them to enlightenment, they appreciated the time he spent teaching them. Unfortunately, Sanjaya could not release his attachment to being a famous teacher and refused to join them. As often as he could, the Venerable Sariputta would seek to serve the Buddha. He would assist in giving instructions to monks and look after their welfare. Before going to rest, the Venerable Sariputta would always make sure to pay his respects to the Buddha. Then, immediately after, if the Venerable Assaji was staying in the same temple, the Venerable Sariputta would pay his respects to the Venerable Assaji, the monk who helped him achieve Sotapanna. However, there were times when the Venerable Sariputta did not reside in the same temple as the Buddha and the Venerable Assaji. On those occasions, the Venerable Sariputta would discern which direction the Buddha was in and bow 3 times. Then, he would discern which direction the Venerable Assaji was, and then bow 3 times. When the other monks saw this, they found it very strange. They gossiped amongst themselves. Why was the chief disciple seemingly worshipping the cardinal directions? Even now, it seemed the Venerable Sariputta had not given up his Brahmanical views. When these complaints reached the Buddha, he said, "It is not so, monks. Sariputta does not worship the cardinal directions. He salutes the one through whom he first learned the Dhamma. Sariputta is one who gives devout respect to his teacher. One should always revere the person from whom one has learned the Dhamma." In another case, the Venerable Sariputta's gratitude is evident in the story of the elder Rata. Rata was a poor Brahmin who stayed at the Chetavana monastery at Savatthi. He served as a temple helper and often performed tasks such as weeding, sweeping, and taking out the trash. The monks often shared their leftover food with him. One day, Rata decided he wanted to ordain before his death. However, when he asked monks to be his preceptor, they did not want to ordain him. Regardless of whom he asked or even begged, the answer was always no. In order to ordain, a monk needs a preceptor. That preceptor is responsible for teaching and caring for the monks that he ordains. None of the monks wanted the burden of ordaining and teaching an old man. One day, the Buddha was mentally surveying the world and saw that Rata was ripe for arahantship, full enlightenment. He asked the gathered monks if anyone had ever remembered receiving some help from the poor Brahmin. At this, the Venerable Sariputta spoke up. He said, "I remember a time that the Brahmin Rata went to beg for food. Then, when he saw me, he offered the entire meal that he had begged for himself to me. The Lord Buddha then asked Sariputta if he was willing to ordain Rata, and Sariputta gratefully accepted. Sariputta gave Rata instructions time and time again, and reminded him what to do and what to avoid. The elder Rata gratefully listened and received all admonitions gladly. And after a short time, the elder Rata attained full enlightenment as an arahant. The Buddha often spoke of the Venerable Sariputta as being wise and a helper to his fellow monks. The Venerable Sariputta often did not go on alms rounds in the early morning as the other monks did. Instead, when they had all gone, he would walk around the entire monastery, and whenever he saw an unswept place, he swept it. Whenever he found twigs and branches on the floor, he gathered them up and put them in their proper place. He would check the furniture and seating mats. If anything needed mending, he would mend it. His goal was to prevent any non-Buddhist ascetics who might visit the monastery from seeing any disorder that could lead to their speaking in contempt of Buddhism. He did not want them to incur negative karma. Then, he would stop by the hall of the sick to console them and ask them about their needs. In times when the Venerable Sariputta traveled long distances with the Buddha, he did not walk at the head of the procession as one might expect a chief disciple to do. Instead, he would first attend to those who were old, very young, or unwell. He would help apply oils to their wounds and sores, and would travel with them. Because of this, the Venerable Sariputta would often arrive late and did not have proper quarters. However, he didn't complain and just slept under a tree. The Buddha used this as an opportunity to teach the monks that living together, they should show respect for the most senior monks and make sure that they have proper lodgings. On one occasion, the Venerable Sariputta was invited to visit the Brahmin Tananchani on the Brahmin's deathbed. The Venerable Sariputta reflected that Brahmins are bent on the Brahma world and taught the dying Brahmin the 4 Brahma Vihara, the contemplations of universal love, empathy, sympathetic joy, and acceptance. This was the path to the Brahma world. And then, he ended his teachings there without teaching the path to insight. When the Venerable Sariputta returned from this visit, the Buddha asked him, "Why, Sariputta, when there was more to teach, did you set the Brahmin's thoughts on the inferior Brahma world?" Sariputta replied, "I thought, these Brahmin desire the Brahma world. Should I not show him the way to get what he wants?" The Buddha then said, "The Brahmin has died and gone to the Brahma world." Sariputta understood his mistake. He taught someone who was capable of bringing rebirth to an end to go to an inferior rebirth. As a result, the Brahmin would have to spend a long time in the Brahma world before he would have another chance at a human birth to strive for enlightenment. Sariputta humbly took his admonishment. Another one of Venerable Sariputta's outstanding traits was his khanti, his patience and forbearance. One day, a group of people were praising the Venerable Sariputta as one who has great patience and never gets mad. A Brahmin who strongly held false views said, "He must only be this way since no one has tested him. I shall provoke him and show that he has anger like the rest of us." So when the Venerable Sariputta was receiving alms, the Brahmin decided to approach him from behind and gave him a tremendous blow. The Venerable Sariputta merely wondered aloud, "What was that?" And then he continued on, without even looking back at his attacker. The Brahmin felt the fire of remorse in every part of his body. He immediately prostrated at the feet of the elder and begged for forgiveness. The Venerable Sariputta asked, "For what?" "In order to test your patience, I struck you from behind." "I see. Very well. I forgive you." "Venerable Sir, if you are willing, please allow me to invite you for alms at my house." The Venerable Sariputta silently consented and followed the Brahmin to his house. However, the people who saw the despicable attack were not so easily assuaged. They waited at the Brahmin's house with weapons, ready to punish him. The lay disciples said, "Respected elder, please step away from him so that we may punish him as he rightly deserves." The Venerable Sariputta, not stepping away, asked, "For what?" "This man struck you, and we will make sure he gets what he deserves." "But what do you mean? Was it you or me that he struck?" "It was you, Venerable Sir." "Well, if it was me he struck, I have already pardoned him, There is no need for punishment. Another one of Venerable Sariputta's outstanding traits was his humility. Not only was he willing to accept corrections from anyone, he would do so with humility and gratitude. It was on one occasion that through momentary negligence, a corner of the elder's robes were worn inappropriately. A 7-year-old novice noticed and pointed this out to the elder. Instead of becoming angry or embarrassed, the Venerable Sariputta stepped aside and rearranged his garment. Then, he turned to the scared novice and said, "Now it is correct. Thank you, my teacher." The Venerable Sariputta was truly an ideal role model for all to follow. What did you learn from this story? We hope you enjoyed the video. Click like if you did, and click subscribe if you want to see our uploads.